Hi everyone. In this tutorial, we're going to look at the basics, absolute fundamentals of using Adobe Photoshop. And we're going to use a project where we actually make a mandala out of satellite imagery as a way of getting used to the tools in Photoshop. So to get started, I'm on Google Earth. This is earth.google.com. And if you're not familiar with it, you can click and drag around, go anywhere in the world and see satellite imagery. If you kind of get twisted around like this, you can hold down Shift and click and rotate. You'll also notice we want to do a lot of screenshotting to get the imagery that we're going to import in Photoshop. But we don't want all of these place names on here. So we need to change some settings on the map. So first up, I'm going to go up to View and then Base Map Settings. And I'm going to do the preset for clean. I can also have the tools a little further away, so I know just where I'm at currently. It's looking somewhere up in Canada maybe. So for this project, use your the best imagery possible. Find interesting places, shapes, constructions, or natural formations from the satellite imagery that will make your overall project just more interesting to finish up with. So some of this is going to come down to literally just going around the world and zooming in and finding interesting things. You might have to do a little searching around. You might find some sort of interesting lake or this L shape of trees. That might be something interesting. You can also, of course, go to look around for cities. And look at this really beautiful green lake here. I'm sure this is probably a city, probably somewhere in the United States now. But if you want to do something more man-made, that's also fine. I'm not sure what this is. Looks like a solar panel field. Let's just actually start with this. I'm going to get it kind of lined up so it looks like it's at pretty much 90-degree angles here. And I'm going to screenshot what I see from the satellite imagery here. So I'm using a Mac to screenshot a specific section. You press Command, Shift, and 4 all at the same time. Command, Shift, 4. And when you do that, you'll see my cursor here. It looks like a little crosshairs. This is where I can click and drag. And so I'm not worried about getting other stuff. So I can just click and drag and it makes a selection rectangle. And I'm holding down and clicking and dragging out to create the selection rectangle. And then when I let go, you hear it makes a little snapshot sound. That gets saved onto my desktop as a screenshot. So I'm going to start with that. Maybe actually I'll do this a little more a circle here. We do the same thing, Command Shift 4. Actually, I'm going to have my selection rectangle over all three of these circles. Might be able to use those in some interesting ways. And so the rest of it is just going to be taking some time to explore literally as much of the surface of the earth as you want to find interesting shapes. I recommend if you have a theme for your project, let's say different types of shapes, different types of pools or airports or glaciers, different things on islands or something. This is actually kind of another funny shape here. I'm gonna grab a screenshot. Looks like something on a golf course. So anyway, you see the process. I'm just exploring the earth, taking screenshots as I go. Now I'm gonna skip forward a bit to having these screenshots organized in a folder because they get automatically placed on the desktop if you're using a Mac, and I'm going to organize them into a separate folder. Okay, now the next step is to actually get Photoshop opened. So go ahead and open it on your computer. Again, it can be in your applications folder, or you can go to the Adobe Creative Cloud icon and press to open Photoshop. If you don't have it installed, obviously you'll have to install it first before you can open it. So I have Photoshop open now. I'm going to click on New File, and just like what you might be familiar with in Adobe Illustrator, it gives you some presets here, but we're going to make our own project specific size. So you can title it in here, anything you want. I'll just say Mandala, and it's set to inches. Make sure yours is set to inches, and I'm going to do 10 by 10. So it's going to be a square composition. And 300 resolution, 300 pixels per inch is the resolution, and I'm using CMYK. Again, 300 is the minimum that you need for printing. I know we're not printing these right now, but if you want to print it later, have it at 300 pixels per inch. And also CMYK is the color space for printing. RGB is a color space for screens. Your laptop screen, your phone screen. CMYK is what printers, the ink or toner, is what printers use to print imagery. So the rest of this I will leave as is. I'm going to press create. So I get a blank square at the moment. And now I need to place or import the images, the screenshots that I just took. Okay, so we are going to, you have two options here, to either place embedded or place linked. Now the difference between these is when you place a linked image, it is looking at the actual file, finding it on your computer, your laptop or whatever, and then looking at that file on the computer and bringing it into Photoshop. Versus embedding it, it's taking that file, that image file, copying it, and having the image file also live, I'm using the word live, it exists in the Photoshop file. Now real quick, the pros and cons of both of these. With linked images, your Photoshop file is going to be smaller, and you don't have this massive Photoshop file that you have to move around if necessary. With embedded files, they are in your Photoshop file, so if you do move it from one computer to the next, the links will not be broken. Those images will go with that Photoshop file to that new computer because they're embedded in that Photoshop file. And of course the trade-off is that it makes a Photoshop file much larger, especially if you're working with lots of photos or images, because all of those file sizes are adding up into that one larger Photoshop file. But as long as you don't have any space issues, I'm going to do place embedded, just because, again, if they're linked, even if the folder gets moved around or renamed, the links might get broken, and Photoshop might say, hey, I don't know where these photos are anymore, and I can't show them to you. So I'm going to press place embedded, and then, and here is the folder with some of the screenshots that I took, and I'm going to press place. So I selected one, press place, and then before you do anything else, at the top here you'll see a little no symbol or a check mark. This is where you can still resize these images, but I would just recommend not doing anything to it right now, just pressing the check mark, because you can resize them later on. You're just gonna accept the placement that you've made. So I'm going to do that 2 more times with those other files that I have in here. Press the check mark, file, place embedded, and the last one, place, and then click the check mark. Okay, so I have on my right side here the layers, which again is similar but will look a little different than Adobe Illustrator. But I have the 3 image files as 3 separate layers. Also, just as a reference, I am using the Essentials workspace so that I can see all of my tools and everything around here. If your screen looks a little different, you might be using a different workspace. So you can change that here to Essentials. All right, so next up, we want to start cutting out pieces from these screenshots. Now, obviously, on this one, it's this kind of the striped pattern that I want to keep. So to do that first, I have to make a selection. So there's different ways to make a selection. Let me bring my Photoshop screen in just a little bit. There's different ways to make a selection. You can use the rectangular marquee tool, or if you click on that and hold down, you also have the elliptical marquee tool. We'll use that one in a bit for those circles that I found in some satellite imagery. For this, I'm going to do something. I'm going to start freehand. I'm going to use the lasso tool. And the lasso tool can make a selection. In this case, I'm just going to draw around the stripes here. So I'm going to click and draw around this selection. It's not going to be perfect. This is part of the lasso tool. And there's other ways of doing something a little bit more with more control over it. But I'm just showing different ways to start out with. I wouldn't recommend using the lasso tool for this project. But nevertheless, this is just showing how one of these tools works. So I just freehand drew this line around the selection, and once I let go, I drew it all the way back to the starting point, so it had a contained area. Once I let go, you'll see that line around, it's moving. We call these the marching ants. This shows that there is an active selection. If I want to undo that selection, like I don't like the shape I drew, I can press Command D. Again, that's on Windows, that's on Mac. I believe it's probably Control D on Windows. Next up is also, I'll just show the rectangular marquee tool. So this one, you're not freehand drawing it. You just click and drag, a selection box, just like when you were doing the screenshot. Now the problem with this, and I let go and I have this rectangular selection, but the problem is I don't want a rectangular selection. I want a selection that fits the shape of these stripes here. So in this case, the rectangular marquee tool also doesn't work. The lasso tool didn't work because it was too messy. The lines were uneven, didn't look good. This one is just a rectangle, obviously doesn't work. So what I recommend for this project is to use the pen tool. Now, if you're familiar with using the pen tool in Illustrator, that is used to make shapes, lines, paths, points, all that kind of stuff. Similar in Photoshop. However, you can use the pen tool to make a selection. I'll show how to do that. So pen tool is here, again, on Mac, keyboard shortcut P. And instead of freehand drawing it with my mouse, just like you use the pen tool other places, I'm going to click once, make a point, and say I click here, click and then drag to have a slight curve there. And you'll see it's still making a shape, but it's okay. We're going to fix this. Now, for sake of time, I am not going to worry about making this look really perfect. I'm just going to show that you have a whole lot more control over the shape. Okay, so I've made this shape here. It still is looking at the points and paths. So after I've finish making that shape. And by the way, I had the fill on and the stroke off. It will be actually better to have the fill off and the stroke on, so you don't see this filled shape. You can see the area of the satellite imagery, and you're just making a line around it. So the way it looks now is just because I had the fill on and the stroke off. And now I'm going to either right click or control click on one of those paths on the edge of this shape I just made. So when I do that, there's an option here. I can press make selection. And a little menu box will pop up here. For now, I recommend just keeping the feathering at 0 pixels. Basically, feathering is how soft or hard that edge of the selection will be. Right now at 0, it'll be completely a perfectly hard edge. That's not required for this project. You could use something that's a little softer, that has a little bit of a kind of like a fade out in a way. But for this, I'm just gonna keep it at 0 pixels. I'm gonna press OK. And you'll notice when I do that, I get the same marching ants that makes the selection. So it took the path and points that I made with the pen tool, and I made a selection out of it. Okay, now we're not done yet. You'll notice back over here on the Layers tab, it added a new shape layer, which we don't need. I can actually just click on the eyeball here and turn it off, so I don't need to see that. And now we have to select the layer that we want to basically cut out this shape. And this would apply with the marquee tool or the lasso tool. We didn't go that far because I'm showing here the pen tool. But with the selection, we're making the selection to cut out this piece from the rest of this screenshot. So I'm going to turn off the eyeballs of all the other layers so we can't see them. They're no longer visible. It's only this layer that we're looking at. And now I have to click on this layer to show that it is selected. And you'll also notice on the layers, it gives you a little thumbnail of what the layers look like. At the bottom right of the thumbnail, you'll see this little symbol. That means it's a smart layer. You don't have to worry about smart layers right now and what they do, but what matters for this project is that in order to delete or cut out a piece of the satellite imagery, they can't be smart layers. They have to be rasterized layers. Rasterized layers is just editable pixels, basically. So I'm going to control click or right click on this layer, and near the bottom it says rasterized layer. I'm going to click on that, and you'll notice when I click on the rasterized layer, the little icon disappears. It goes away. So with this selection, and I have this layer selected and it's rasterized, if I press delete on my keyboard, it deletes the inside of that selection. Now obviously I'm going to press Command Z to bring it back. We don't want to delete what's in the selection. We want to delete everything outside of the selection. In order to do that, we have to invert the selection. And I realize you're not going to be able to see this from my screen recording, but at the top there's a menu option that says select. See layer, type, select, filter. I'm going to hover over select, and then there's an option here to press inverse. Also keyboard shortcut Shift Command I, but I'm just going to click on inverse. And now you'll notice the marching ants are also included all the way around the canvas here, because the selection is now everything on the outside of this shape. So now if I press delete, everything is gone except that inside piece. Now there's still a selection. We still see the marching ants. So I'm going to press Command D to deselect. Okay, so with that, we've now cut out a piece of our satellite imagery. And we can use this to start building our mandalas. Now I'll go ahead and turn this off. I'm going to do it once more with this layer. So I'll start by rasterizing it. It's totally fine to do that first. And I'm actually just going to cut out this interesting shape here, I guess, with these awnings. Whatever that is, maybe it's like looks like a park or something. Okay. So this time I'm going to go to my elliptical marquee tool. So I clicked on the rectangular marquee tool and I clicked and held down. Opens up these options and I can select elliptical marquee. And then roughly I'm going to start with my cursor at the top and then move it over to the right. So it's at the topmost part of the circle and the leftmost. I know I said right. I meant the leftmost part of the circle. And now I can click and make a selection that's elliptical. You'll notice I can move my mouse around. I'm clicking and holding down and changing the proportions of the ellipse. If I want a perfect circle, I just have to hold down Shift while I'm clicking and dragging out the mouse. So I'm not going to use this because I'm going to use the one for the awning. You can see now as I move the mouse around, it keeps a perfectly constrained circle. Okay, again, Command D to deselect. Let's do that with this piece here of the awning. So click, hold down Shift, drag it out, let go, and now I have a selection. And I'm going to go to select, inverse. And since I'm not doing the pen tool this time, I don't have to do a few of these other steps. But anyway, I'm going to click on delete now, and I'm left with just that one circle. Command D to deselect. Now I can move this around. Now, I purposely did something that's actually potentially problematic just to use as an example. So let's say I like this, but it's too small. I want to make it big. So I have my selection tool, which is, it's also in Photoshop, it's called the move tool. I will probably always refer to it as the selection tool. Keyboard shortcut V, by the way. And then if you don't see these lines and these little squares where you can resize, your option here to show transform controls, that's probably turned off. So if you don't see it there, click on this check mark to turn it on. When I do that, I can use my selection tool, click on one corner, and I can drag it out to make it bigger. When you make a transformation, like resizing it, or I can also hover my cursor over a little further away from the corner and rotate it. Any transformation like that, I have to apply the transformation by clicking on this check mark up here at the top again. Now, here's the issue with what I just did. It's rasterized, and when I made it bigger, it didn't have a high enough resolution to avoid pixelation. So if you know that you're going to resize things, especially if you're making them larger, it doesn't really matter if you're making them smaller, but if you're going to make them larger, before you rasterize, you need to make it that size while it's still a smart object. Okay, so let's go through this again the right way. So if I know I want this little piece here, but I want it bigger, I'm going to right click or control click on that layer and convert to smart object. Now I'm going to resize it. So I want it this size. I apply the transformation. Now I go to my elliptical marquee tool. Make a selection. And now I have to go back and rasterize the layer again. So it's going back and forth between rasterized or smart object. I'm going to select inverse, press delete, Command D to deselect, and now I have this object. Now there is one other thing. Since I enlarged this whole layer, I don't see any of the layer as it is. I deleted it. But everything that was outside of this canvas in Photoshop, all of that is still there. So if I move this around, you'll still see some pieces of that screenshot, which we don't want, obviously. After you're done cutting out the shape, I recommend converting it back to a smart object, because then it can go back and forth. You can resize it. I can bring this in, and very quickly I'm going to go to my rectangular marquee tool, because this is a rectangle. I'm just going to select these areas. Oh, I'm sorry. I have to rasterize first. Press delete. Select this area, delete, select, delete, select, delete. And now I will convert to smart object again. And I realize it's not a great quality photo anyway. You know, it's satellite images, so it doesn't look like it's really sharp, you know, like a sharp photograph or something. So it kind of will always have a little bit of that pixelation just from the camera itself. But this is the proper way to resize images. If you make something smaller and then larger, and it's not a smart object, it will end up being pixelated, which you want to avoid. All right, so I'm going to turn this layer back on, and you'll notice we have 2 cutout layers already. Last one is this. Again, I'm going to use the pen tool. This will be easy. It's rectangular. So I'm going to keep it this size as well. So I'm going to go ahead and rasterize it. Okay, now in this case, I'm going to turn off the fill, and I will go ahead and just turn on the stroke. And I'm going to click on the corners, trace out this shape. This one's pretty easy. I'm going to close it. And now I'm going to select that layer. Actually, I'm sorry. I have to make a selection out of the shape I just made for the pen tool. So I'm going to right click or control click on that path, anywhere on a path of the shape I just made. Press make selection, press OK. Now I'm going to click on that layer because it made a new shape layer, which we don't want, we don't care about. So I'm going to click on this shape layer, select, inverse, delete. And now Command D to deselect. And I'll go ahead and you can delete layers, like these shape layers, by just clicking on them and pressing delete. Now I can turn all of these on. And I'm going to go ahead and make sure all of them are back to being smart objects. And now I can start moving around. So I realize this is a little bit tedious, especially finding all these images, cutting them out, placing them, making all these selections and having all these layers, smart objects, raster. I know all that can be a little bit tedious. Just take some time, find some interesting images, bring them all together on all their layers, and then you can start duplicating them. So in order to have a successful mandala, it would be great if every little piece was kind of its own, but for this radial symmetry, it's actually fine to start duplicating some of these pieces. And I'll show you what I mean by that. Now 3 pieces here, that's not enough for the mandala, but I'll show you what it's looking like just with 3. So immediately with the 3 shapes I have here, I can start seeing like this one probably would be good in the corner. So I'm going to click and drag. If I hold on shift, it will do it 45 degree angles. Let's say I move it over here to fill up that corner. Press the check mark. And then let me adjust my screen here. This layer is selected. If I click on it and drag it down to this little box with a plus symbol, it will duplicate that layer. So if I click and drag it down, hover it over that plus symbol, let go, it duplicates this layer. Now the 2 are on top of each other, so now I just gotta move one over, and I have 2. The other option is you can copy and paste. So I have this layer selected. I'm going to press Command C again for Mac, and then Command V to paste, and it's duplicated that layer again. So now I have 3 of them. There's one other option. If you click on the layer and then you hold down Option, you'll see when I press Option, the cursor changes. So I'm holding on Option. I'm going to click and drag, and it duplicates it automatically. So these are 3 different ways to duplicate a layer. So in this case, I think I will rotate them, have them around the corners. That seems reasonable. And here we go. Okay. And I might start putting, let's see, maybe I'll do some of these shapes. I'm going to make it smaller. Maybe something like this. And this shape is above all these other layers. So that's why it looks like it's on top or above the solar panel layers below. So let's say I do something like that. And then rotate. And I'm just using this as a demo. I'm not worried about it being the best thing ever right now. I'm going to go a little bit quickly. Rotate these around. Oops. Gotta be careful where you hold the cursor. Now this one, let's go ahead and do it almost like a little jewel on a crown. I'm going to put it around maybe these corners here. Actually, no, I'm going to basically make a ring with this. And I'm just going to duplicate them, move them all around, and then I can adjust them later to get it perfect. Okay, so something like that. you would take time to kind of move these all around to get them a nice perfect circle. Sometimes it's helpful. You see these rulers at the top on the left side? I can click and drag out these guides. You know, sometimes it can be helpful to see where the center point is. And since this is 10 inches, I know the centers can be 5 inches. So I'm looking at for 5 here, vertically and horizontally. And, you know, this might be something where I know I want to put one of these circles right perfectly centered on the vertical and horizontal axes. And I might add another one here. And so this is the part of the process. Lining everything up. Again, I'm not gonna lie, it is tedious, but it's also not very complicated. It's something that once you just dedicate a few hours to, you can make something happen relatively quickly. So even just with this tutorial, starting from scratch and just 3 objects, I already have something that's building up to be a mandala. Now, I also highly recommend having a variety of scales. So you'll notice some of these, the solar panel shape layers, those are big. There's only 4 of them, and they're big, bold on the 4 corners. Then the one with these stripes, quite honestly, I don't love where they currently are. I probably would move them around. At the very least, maybe I would put them underneath some of these other layers. And so you can click on a layer, drag it, and reorder them. So you'll notice I moved this layer. I can zoom in on it. I moved this layer below some of these other layers, so now this circle appears on top of it. So I can rearrange some of those things. That's kind of like a medium-sized shape, and then I have smaller shapes with these circles. You want a variety. It creates hierarchy in your composition. Of course, with mandalas, you're probably gonna have radial symmetry, and then having these little pieces adds that little detail. Even using larger cutouts, but with these, like the stripes, it's like these little stripy parallelograms, I guess you would say, and those provide a kind of a texture. Same with the solar panels. They provide a texture and detail and richness to your mandala. So look for things like that have a lot of detail or textures. Those tend to work really well for a project like this. Okay, a few other things. You don't have to edit the colors, but for fun, and especially if you have some sort of theme, you might want to. So you have this window here for adjustments. If you don't see it, you can go to Window and then click on Adjustments right here. I'm going to do Hue Saturation. So I click on Adjustments and I click on Hue Saturation, and it makes what's called an adjustment layer above all these other layers. So an adjustment layer is going to adjust. It's going to change, in this case, the hue, the saturation, which is the color, of all the layers underneath it. So since this is at the top, it will change the color of everything I have here because all the other layers are below it. So the little icon here, I can click on that. I'm going to double click and it opens up this box. And you'll notice if I adjust the hue, it's starting to change the colors, making it more yellow, green, blue, red, wherever I want it to be. Let's say we do something kind of reddish. There's also some teal in there. I mean, increase the saturation. Let's say make it like really red, just as an example. And also lightness and darkness. I'm going to leave that pretty much where it's at. So I can click on the eyeball for this adjustment layer and turn it off and on. So this is the original, and this is with the color adjustments. Again, you don't have to do that, but It's a way to maybe add a little pop, add a little extra contrast, or in this case, making the colors more vivid. So that might work well for your mandala. Okay, I also recommend filling up the whole composition. Even if you use something basic and pretty flat as a background, let's say you go to the desert and get a pretty flat, sandy colored texture, or the ocean and it's that's bluish green color, or somewhere in the Arctic and it's this snowy color. Don't leave blank areas. That won't look good. So as I'm filling this up, I would make sure all of these spaces get covered up with something. You can keep adding these pieces behind it. At the very least, if I go ahead and, just as an example, I'm going to place embedded. I'm going to go back to this one. And I'll press place, and I'll make this very large. I'm going to use that green grass field as a background, just so there's something behind it. Now, accept the changes. Now you'll notice this one is above the adjustment layer, and that's why the color is not being affected. If I move this layer down, suddenly it's changed because now the adjustment layer is above it. I'm going to move this all the way to the bottom because I want it to serve as a background so that I make sure everything is filled up. So before I had this empty space, but just with something like this, I know there's going to be something behind it. We don't want just this empty negative space for a mandala like this. Okay, that's everything for this tutorial. That is getting you started in Photoshop. The basic tools, getting your layers, your project set up, seeing your layers, cutting out shapes, moving things around, adjusting colors, a lot of basic tools. After you're done with your project and you want to export it, it's going to be similar to maybe some of the other programs you use. I'm going to go to File and then Export and Export As. And I'm going to keep it as a JPEG. I'm going to make sure it's the highest quality. Everything else looks good. I'm going to press Export, and then I can press Save, and then I'll have an exported, in this case, JPEG file that can be used. It can be printed or used online. It can be used for social media or whatever kind of project you're working on. So that's the export process for your mandala. All right, let me know if you have any questions. I'm happy to cover things as needed. Don't forget, there are plenty of other Photoshop tutorials out there on YouTube. So if there's something that you're wondering, how do I do this? And something I didn't cover in this tutorial, it's probably out there. So there are little niche tools and techniques, processes that may be applicable to your project and not to everyone else. So you might just have to do some searching to find whatever that technique is that you need, that you're trying to make happen. And if you're having trouble finding something, please just let me know, send me a question, and I will respond as quick as possible.